If you've been in solar installation for any length of time, you know that efficiency isn't just nice to have, it's survival. A recent NREL study found that soft costs still make up 65% of the total cost of residential solar installations. With margins tightening across the industry, dropping from an average of 38% in 2020 to around 22% today, every truck roll, every design revision, every change order eats directly into profitability. The days of being able to absorb operational inefficiencies through high margins are behind us. What's fascinating is how installers are approaching this challenge differently. Some are doubling down on the manual processes, arguing that technology adds complexity and cost, and others are going all in on digital transformation, integrating everything from drone surveys to AI-powered designs. We've seen companies using paper forms for years suddenly jump to mobile apps and digital checklists for field documentation and data capture. And we've watched others invest heavily in technology that ends up costing more in the long run because the promised efficiencies didn't materialize. What separates the success stories from the cautionary tales often comes down to implementation. How well these tools actually fit into the daily workflow of an installation team, their designers, their ops managers, their sales reps, and the whole group. Rooftop Power has been at the forefront of using technology to streamline their operations, growing steadily even as other installers have struggled. They have found that sweet spot where technology enhances rather than complicates their work. Darrell Handley, their director of operations, has been instrumental in this transformation. With over a decade in the industry, Darrell has seen firsthand how the right operational systems can make or break an installation business. Today, we'll talk with Darrell about how solar installers can leverage technology to drive real efficiencies, not just adding tools for the sake of having them and growing their tech stack, but creating systems that actually allow you to work faster, more accurately, and more profitably. Welcome to When Life Gives You Lumens, Darrell. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jason. It's a privilege to be here with you.
All right, so let's start here. Your email signature says, the guy that gets stuff done. Okay. And I had to look at your real title, Director of Operations, on your LinkedIn, but I appreciate what you put in your signature. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a little more vague. It's the guy that does stuff.
Fair enough. That's
Hopefully,
right. That's right.
hopefully some of that stuff is getting stuff done. Um, but I think a little bit of it is that's my personality coming out, and I also think it draws on some root parts of me. One thing that is always really important is I want to succeed and I want to win. And in any team function is that requires needing to do whatever is most important at any given time for the success of the team. And that's in terms of my day to day, just trying to interject myself wherever the biggest problems or wherever the biggest opportunities are so that our team can be successful. Um, I think that's the root of the guy that does stuff.
I've known you for a long time, and I know there is zero ego in anything you do. So when you say whatever it takes to win, or your focus on the team, where does that come from?
I think just a true intrinsic motivation to produce something that's great, and not just like a selfish greatness, but actually providing value to the community that we operate in, value to the people that we get to work with, value to the partners that we get to work with. And I think that's something that can be overly overlooked in business, but also overlooked in our industry. And I think that when you can do your best to find a sweet spot of those things is when a true difference can be made.
I'm going to push you on this a little bit, maybe go a little deeper. Is there
Sure.
something in your life where this comes from, your upbringing, your background, right? Team sports, or a lesson you learned, an inflection point in your career, right? Like, is there something that, because I'll give you the context for the question, right? We speak to a lot of installers who have that same philosophy, right? Or at least they claim to. I know you,
hmm
I know Rooftop, I know it's unique. And so for you, is there somewhere deeper where this really comes from?
I don't know that there's one specific thing that I can that I can point to. I am the youngest of seven, and the closest in age to me is just over 5 years. So perhaps there's a little bit of that runt in me trying to keep up, trying to make sure that I'm not just well, maybe that I'm not just keeping up, but that I actually have a shot to be seen, to be heard. Uh, that could be part of it. And then, I mean, sports was always a big part of my upbringing and who I was. And right, that's sports is you want to win. Everyone's after the same goal, kind of like you're saying, like everyone preaches the same stuff, but not everyone can win. And so part of that is even when you do falter, you got to keep playing and you got to keep getting better. You got to keep growing. And I think there's just a lot of joy in that. Like that's something that I find true joy in is the process of becoming better, the process of becoming great.
I think the word process underpins a lot of your methodical approach to things, and we'll get to more of that in a second. Um, Very telling too. I like to think that where you are, maybe your this isn't universal, but where you are in your family construct, as well as your engagement in sports, is are two bellwethers for how you approach your job. Again, it's not universal, but when I actually hear that in an interview, I like to go deep in those two areas. So that's it's no surprise, and we know that Rooftop Power is a winning organization, and you guys have proven that time and time again. I'd love to start earlier in your career. Walk me through how you got to Rooftop Power and the solar industry overall. What brought you to the industry, and what were your early days like?
Yeah. I a lot of my professional experience was in logistics of some sort, driving efficiencies, figuring out how to get things to work, taking processes as they were and trying to make them better. And I had opportunities to work in more of the startup atmosphere, which I really liked because it was dynamic, it was fast, and it drew on that inner entrepreneur in me, which I didn't really know was there, but it spoke to me, and I really liked that. Um, and so, in getting to do that, that led me to start a business for myself, which again was heavily centered around logistics. And my family and I decided to move from out west out to Rhode Island. And by chance, several months after we had moved out here, I ran into the owner of Rooftop Power, and we just started talking, and uh, went out, got to know each other a little bit more. He had that was more of the earlier days of Rooftop Power, but he had kind of let me know what they were doing, what they were looking to do, that they'd like to bring me on at some point. And probably about 7 or 8 months passed by before it, things worked out so that it could happen. Uh, but that was kind of my subtle introduction into solar, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just knew that I loved the startup phase. I love the grind, and I love making things grow and grow sustainably. And I I I think we've gotten to do that for the last several years.
Yeah, indeed. In your opinion, what makes the solar industry unique? Because obviously, this is, as you alluded to, this is your Rooftop is one of your first forays in solar, but you've seen a lot of other industries and built your own businesses. So what makes this industry unique?
I think there's several things. One, it seemed to be pretty volatile. Um, it's also amazing how it's complex in simplicity. There's so much, like, I'm sure as you get to look at installers all across the country, there's so much of what's done that is the same, right? Like you're going through the same milestones, but how you go through those milestones is anyone's choice. Like there's not just like one standard way to do something right. There's so many ways to approach it, different methodologies. And I think that mixed in with uh, just a lot of the changes that come both a lot like externally too, since it isn't a super regulated industry, at least as far as other industries go. I think kind of like those three things make it a very dynamic industry for those that are involved in it.
I personally hate the term solar coaster, but it does seem to have merit, especially recently. Um, Would you say that solar is a hard space to operate in?
It's a good question. I don't know, at least from my experience, I don't know that's for the faint of heart. I think it definitely requires a certain a certain heart to get into and to not just like come in to get in to have success to get out, but if your like intention is to get in and stay in, I think it does and should require uh, a type of oomph behind it.
Why do you think that? I agree with you, by the way, and we've seen people get pretty battle tested. But why do you feel that way?
Well, I hope I don't offend anyone in this answer, but I think that a lot of what people would label as wrong in the solar industry comes from those people who are just trying to make quick money, to just turn something around short term. I think the value is in the long term. And to do anything, to be great at anything for a long period of time, it requires a meeting point of long-term thinking and the right execution from the start and just consistency in in those things.
Hmm. I like to. I've been recently thinking about the personas in our industry and how diverse it is, and how it makes it unique and unusual. I can't think of another industry that has the combination of the environmentalists, the kind of more hippy dippy early stage, early movers in our industry, right? The really green oriented people, um, truly, so in some cases with profitability in mind, in some cases not caring at all because it's the right thing to do for the planet, right?
All right.
And then the other end of the spectrum, you have um, whether you call them the solar bros or the more sales oriented culture,
Yeah.
right, in our industry. Whether it's in the middle or another part of our multifaceted Venn diagram, you then have very tech oriented people, um, especially as the industry and blue collar work becomes more tech oriented with AI and other things. You also have just contractors, right? Like people who
Hmm.
have been in the trades. And I can't think of another industry that has all of these people typically working together, whether at the same company or across the table as vendors and partners. Um, it's a wonderful and really weird combination of people. And I love
Yeah.
it. But I guess to your point, to navigate that breadth of personality is unusual. I can't think
Yeah.
of another industry that has that.
Keeps things fun.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, okay, so in that spirit, you've worked in Rhode Island, you've worked in Utah, you've worked in different parts. What would you say makes some of these business environments different? And whether it's from an efficiencies perspective or just relationally, the business flow that you've experienced.
Between the two markets.
The two markets or other markets that you're aware of.
Well, I think one of the really enjoyable things about living and working in Utah is Utah for the last handful of years is just a very booming area for business as a whole, but also for tech. And so you see a lot of the up and coming stuff coming out of there, and you see a lot of these really big, really successful companies who dug their feet down and have built something that means something. Um, and I think coming to Rhode Island, it's a different pace. I think that the cultural standard, the cultural norms, and kind of like the working sense are a little bit different. Um, but it feels like there's, Rhode Island's kind of a diamond in the rough in that regard. There's a lot of opportunity here that and a lot of value that can be brought that as such a small state, I don't think it's noticed for. And it's been, where in Utah, it felt like you could find talent at any turn, anywhere, at any time. We've trying to find some of that talent out here has been more challenging, but the people that we've been able to find have been astronomical in the success that we've been able to have.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'd love to go into the early days of Rooftop Power for you, right? What were some of the early projects you were asked to tackle? What were some of those early inefficiencies and how did you address them?
Yeah, I remember one of the first initiatives I was given was to reduce our install timeline. Um, I don't remember exactly what it was at the time. I'll say maybe from sale to getting the install complete, it was like 80 days. That's the number I'll use. And uh, given that I had absolutely no solar experience, there was a lot of testing there because I didn't understand how the operations worked. I didn't understand the technical things that you were saying. So I started. Uh, I had people on the team who were performing on the ground level a lot of these functions, and so I felt like the best place for me to start was to be spending time with them, to be asking, "What are you doing? What's working with what you're doing? What problems are you seeing? Um, what are your pain points? How long are some of these things taking? How long do you feel they should be taking you?" And the amount of insight that I got as I met with people and did that, uh, it was amazing. And obviously, as you break down all the different pieces that it takes to get something from a new project to installation, it was kind of like piecing a puzzle together. It's like each person at each stage that I met with, I was painting like an individual picture. Um, but not any one of those things together was quite enough. And as I'd kind of like started from the end and worked backwards, I had realized that a lot of the problems that people were giving us, that they were saying to me, were really from the beginning parts of the process, which were with our site survey.
Hmm. I think it's no surprise but unique that you dug into each department's challenges or day-to-day happenings. Whenever we meet with installers, we typically ask, about that workflow, and it sometimes baffles me of how leaders, managers, heads of operations don't know the nuances of what each department's doing, and therefore they can't put the pieces together. I'll never forget it. I was at a solar conference. I'm not going to say which one, and I walked up to an installer, fairly large installer, introduced myself. Title was VP of Operations, and I don't remember. It might have been three questions in. They alluded to their design program, and I said, do you use AutoCAD? And he looked at me kind of confused. And of course, like if you're not a designer, that's a bit more of a technical product to use. But I don't know. It seems like the standard for most of the way you draft plan sets and
Yeah,
designs and submit permits and this is the head of operations. Like, and I was, and no surprise that company has struggled. So, kudos to you for digging in, but it should be more the standard. Continue down that train of thought, right? So it started with surveying. How did that? What did it look like at the time? Where did it go? But
hmm
also, how does that affect downstream? Right? We know that solar is not a siloed process, step by step. Things affect the next step. So I'd love to hear what was occurring. Where did you take it? What was the holistic challenge that surveying was the origin of some of the problems and inefficiencies?
yeah. So I'll share what the problems I was like some of the problems that I was seeing scattered. Um, I was noticing that obviously when we were trying to produce our finalized plan set to progress towards permitting, uh, we'd find out that, well, I mean, actually, even before that, right? Getting calls at install and finding out, hey, the plans that we're intending to install, something doesn't fit. It's not going to work. Which is a whole, day long, if not worse, problem of its own. Um, Also finding out, hey, structurally speaking, we can't put stuff where we want to put it, and understanding, well, we might not have gotten the structural information because we were pretty confident we were just going to put it on this one or one and two roof planes. Um, Also finding out that having to go back out for information on the roof, that the drawings just weren't good enough, right? That's what we were doing at the time. We were doing hand drawn surveys and relying on those measurements as we received them. And so it just created a lot of fat, a lot of redundancies, and a lot of frustration for the people doing the work, understandably so, right? Is they're having to redo work that they've already done at least another time, if not more, or they're unable to do the work that they're supposed to be doing because they don't have the correct information that they need.
Okay. And any ability to quantify those challenges, whether
In what
whether
regard?
it's well, uh, you mentioned right the time it wasted on install day, or
Mm.
um, your number of 80 days approximately to get an install completed, right? Were you able to track? Is there a methodology to track the implications of those inefficiencies?
It's yeah, there definitely are. I think at the time, again, like being in such a startup mode, it's to really see a true sense of it, you want to try to isolate variables and to like get data that says, okay, as we've, isolated this one thing and we've done it, we have data that paints this picture. But speed was a big thing at the time, and so there were a handful of things that we were trying to do all at once, with which makes assessing the data, you can kind of draw whatever pictures you choose to. It becomes a little bit less objective in that regard. Um, but I mean, you typically will see the progress, or you'll feel it, and then you'll see it. And so it's like when we start to see some of the changes that we worked on implementing, when you actually see, hey, our completion rate at install day is improving, our timelines like our throughput is improving, our timelines per phases, like if you break down the phases, they're improving, or the number of revisions that something has to go through, number of touch points, those are reducing. um, it can make it hard. Well, like, hey, it was that one thing we decided to do that made this whole change. That can be challenging when you're trying to do so much at once. But you ultimately see the net result that you're hoping for, right? Like if the goal was to do things quicker, the only way to do things quicker was to reduce the waste. And I think you can see that proof. You could derive that from those actions.
And do you guys actually track these metrics on a periodic basis? Do you have a business intelligence tool? I mean, we can get fairly quantitative here. Is that something you're looking at pretty often?
I mean, at the time, we didn't have any fancy systems set up to do it. It was just like it was as fancy as we could get, which was incredibly basic. Um, which was kind of like just the start and end point. Like when did this start? When did it finish? And like what was the kind of like input output of each phase? And it was a very manual thing very manual report to run. At this point, we do have those systems set up where we are able to see live time. What is our average time from you know having a design to getting it completed? What is our average time from needing to submit a permit to having it back, or you needing permit submitted and getting it submitted?
So if I'm hearing correctly, the strategy is how do we track start to finish of each stage, have clearly defined stages through a process, and then, if times are not improving, what are areas where there are challenges or friction or things that are inhibiting a smooth process, and then solving those in isolation. And then over the duration of that value chain, you should see net improvement. Do I have that right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's important to it's easy to want to focus on a pain point, but where you feel pain is not always what you're trying to solve. And there can be a lot of time spent trying to just treat the pain that you're feeling when that might not be what's causing the pain at all. And I think if you can take a step back and try to trace what is causing the pain, and sometimes that goes back a lot further than you might otherwise care to look, but if you follow it, you will find what is causing it. And if you focus on drawing a solution to that, uh, the pain will largely stop.
Can you give us an example? Especially, I think what really stood out to me is your comment. I'll give you a second to think. Your comment that what is the problem in a current phase might not be driven by a problem in that phase, right? The issues going on might not be something that happens in that phase. For example, a redesign is not necessarily related to the designer. It could come from the surveyor,
Right.
right? And so how you link that together And I just kind of threw out one example that I know you and I both know all too
Yeah.
well. But I don't know if there's any other examples that come to mind for you.
Yeah, so I remember that it was all too common several years ago where I would walk in the door at work and we would have, the people that would facilitate our installation crews. And I wouldn't even be able to walk to my desk, which probably wasn't more than 20 feet away from the entrance, without someone coming up to me and with a problem that was presently happening at a job site. Uh, and you can kind of pick it. It could be these don't fit. It could be, uh, there we're seeing something within the panel that we know the inspector is not going to be cool with, that must have gone unnoticed through process, anything like that. It was like every day. And the issue that I had, which I think I can expound your initial question on, was solving those problems sucks. Solving those problems, like if that's your daily job is doing that, I mean, you can do that, but I don't know where the joy is. Like, I think the excitement and the fun is, well, what is causing that? Let's understand and let's go back and find out how we can make sure that this has the least likelihood of happening again. Is it going to happen? Yeah, there's certain things that are inevitable. They'll always happen. But if we could reduce it to a fraction of a percent, well, we can all be happy. And for us, that was looking at, well, what are we doing at our surveys? What are we doing at our survey? What's wrong with it? And how good can we get it so that we don't have to see those problems? What do we need to do post survey to make sure we don't have those problems?
Take me through some of the solutions and how your focus on operational efficiency and streamlining process disseminated through the different departments, right? So we know you and I started working together then. I'd love to hear how that was, but
Yeah.
I want the focus to not just be, promoting our great partnership, right? But more so like, how did your team navigate those changes to process and that desire to get more efficient? And what did that, how did that affect people downstream as it unfolded?
It was a transformation for sure. I think it's pretty common for people not to like change. And I think the average person is more adept to tolerating things that don't work well than they are acclimating to something new that will be better. And that was very much so my reality through a lot of this was kind of driving. Some people were excited about things, but they were very few. Most of the people were less excited about doing something new, even though they were aware of what their problems were. So it was definitely a bit of a transformation in that regard. And it took time for people to see the value, which eventually did come. But I think one of the big changes was like not just adopting drones and not just using Scanifly at our survey, but one of the strategies that I thought was really interesting is like we were struggling. We want to have great people. Like great people are like the number one thing in my book in terms of having. They make all the difference first. And it was really hard to find. Like we struggled finding great people who could perform hand surveys, climbing the ladder, getting on the roof, doing the drawings. The quality of people that role was attracting, we struggled with it. Other states, other companies, they don't. We did. And what I liked and what I noticed as I started, exploring the world of using drones to do surveys was I was working with a different group of people, different personalities of people, and the quality of individuals that I got to talk to who were interested in this drone opportunity was a net gain all in of itself. And that was a really appealing starting point was like we can truly have great people in this role and we can on top of all the other benefits that we believe we're going to see. So that's
That's
kind of like starting point
fascinating.
number one.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, continue down the chain with how the other team members responded or other departments reacted.
I think as far as the drone stuff, like people were excited about that. Like, right, that's the big shiny thing. It doesn't like directly, it might not directly affect them in the same way. I think for a lot of other people, it was a little bit different. I'll try not to be too like vague on it and feel free to probe me a little bit more if I am. But I think it just came down to like, all right, well now that we've kind of started to focus on and correct what this front process should look like. If it starts looking like this, what does it mean for you, and what do you now need to be doing to improve your quality, increase your efficiency, and increase your production? Right? Those are the three things that I'm looking at in terms of any of those roles. And some of them was just as simple as like the workflows that were set up. They just weren't great, which those are kind of, more simple to do. Um, Other ones required changes in partnerships in terms of who we might interface with or who we might use, who we rely on. And other ones like design's kind of historically like a big one that requires like ongoing evaluation, unlike kind of a few of the other milestones that it goes through. Um, yeah, anyways.
No, it's very interesting. Very interesting. I want to go back to you, right? So every time we talk shop, there's always a new technology. Whenever I ask you about something new that Scanify is working towards, you seem like you're always a step ahead and either already done it or certainly have thought about it. Your technology first mindset, right? Where does that come from, right? You're an early mover, you know, where does that come from for you to always be thinking about efficiencies and how technology can drive efficiencies?
I think the core of it again is like, how can we provide the most value? Um, and I think having a technology first focus, there are two, at least for me, there's two prerequisites to implementing technology, because not all technology is created equal. And the two things that I try to prioritize to set up technology for success is one, having great people, and two, having a solid process. Because I've seen firsthand how you can take a great software and you think it's going to solve all of your problems, and I think people typically will end up disappointed. They could take a great software as it is, and it's almost made bad because you do not have the right people working within a good system. And the clearer you are on how your system should be functioning, the more opportunity technology has to scale it, to make it really, really work. And it also provides clarity on what technology you actually need. If you don't know what your processes are, I don't know how you could know what technology is really going to benefit you.
Yeah. I'm going to say something that is the opposite of what a technology company CEO should typically say. Okay. And I observe a lot of my fellow solar software CEOs and other parts of our value chain be obsessed with how technology can replace humans in parts of the value chain. There are certain softwares that tout you don't need a site survey ever because technology will do it for you. You don't need a designer because AI will do it for you. You don't need a plan set provider because technology will do it for you. And I believe that technology can help all those things. But at the end of the day, let's not over glorify solar. It's a construction project. It's a home improvement project. Okay. Like, I'm all in for tech helping and that, but let's be honest. Sometimes too much tech, as you called it, is the shiny thing that distracts people from realizing that this is a services business. We are installers, contractors, your business, Rooftop. It is a services business. It's a people first business. We Scanify, we tech, we are here to help you. We are not here to do it for you. And I do believe that as technology grows, we'll be able to help you more and more. But we as solar software companies, and me as a leader in one of them, I'm not here to overpromise and underdeliver, right? The automated plan set, yeah, maybe 70, 80% of the time, but that 20% that misses it or that misses the AHJ that they thought was the case, well, that's going to cause more problems than you've ever could have imagined, right? Same thing with ditching that site survey. I talked to another solar software CEO last year, and he was pushing me on the value of the site survey. He's like, we can get technology to eliminate it. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, new construction, maybe you trust the plan sets, electrical meters on the outside. You could take the box off, like all these like ways you can get around it. And it's like, but what's the point? Average
Yeah, what's the
revisions and
goal?
change orders are thousands of dollars. You piss off the homeowner, you ruin your reputation. What, to save a $250 truck roll? Like, what are we
Yeah,
doing here? Let's tackle the bigger problems. And so I think that again, and we're a technology company. I think it goes back to your comment. It's about the people, right? Technology is only a tool. Whether it's a ladder, a tape measure, or a drone, the technology is only a tool. It's about the people behind it. And I want to go back to more comments you made, which is one of my favorite stats for where we are in our industry is I think we need to like 3x the solar labor workforce to hit anywhere near our climate goals, our energy goals, or any of the goals that we've set. Like, we have to bring more people into this industry. Technology will help, but at the end of the day, it's good people and good companies. And I think I was
yeah,
so interesting how you phrased it, which is the drone brought in a whole new crop of people. Our industry has
yeah,
a lot of different people, as we talked about, but the fact is we need to bring more people into this tent, into this industry. But it's not just technology; it's the people themselves that make it happen, and it's really really
yeah,
important that you brought up.
yeah, yeah. Technology is I see it as the opportunity for it to accelerate good things. That's where the value is. And that's something I feel very strongly. Like if people are unclear about the technology they could or should be using, focus on how you are doing things or how you could or should be doing things. And as you figure that out first, it's the technology side, it'll start to attract you. It gets clear as you do that.
Hmm. What's your advice for companies or departments or individuals who are averse to change? Because we see it all the time. You commented on it. It's a natural human inclination. It's okay. But how do you massage that? How do you work through that with your teams?
I think that I think there has to be like accountability to the overall culture of the organization. My personal approach is like I want to have a meritocracy in the sense that everyone knows that the most important thing is something having it be the best version of itself, and it doesn't matter whose idea it is. It doesn't matter, if someone at the highest level says that this is how it should be done, someone at the lowest level should be able to provide input and should be allowed to question because the overall goal should be for something to be its best. I don't think that anything less than best should be tolerated, right? Prioritization and moving quick enough, those are other variables that, are challenging, I think, in many organizations. But I think just maintaining a culture of focus of, hey, if you're truly trying to change something, if you want something to be in its best version, if that's your intent, it requires change. That's like always. Nothing will ever be fixed. If it's fixed, it will probably die at some point. It has to change.
That goes back to your winning culture at all costs, doing it the right way. Um, on the website, on Rooftop Power's website, you're in a video where you say, we do all the work and you get all the credit. What does that mean?
Yeah, that I think you get a little wink in there after that too, as well. But that's just part of that's just me being me. Another part of that is uh, we see a lot of value in facilitating and controlling the whole process. I think a lot of problems that we've seen, not just amongst ourselves, but in the industry, comes from constantly subcontracting different parts of the process. And our approach is just focused on we want to provide that experience at every point that we can, because we want to make sure that we have a standard that we're trying to execute at, and we want to make sure that that standard is met to the best of its ability as consistently as possible. And in the off chance that there is something that is less than ideal, we're going to take care of it. And if we're not the ones that are doing it, uh, you could be put in a really awkward and unfun position. And so that's where we want to do as much of it as we can. We want the homeowners to just sit back and really just enjoy the process as much as they can.
That's a real testament to the level of quality and care that that Rooftop Power brings to the table. That's awesome. One more question for you. As you look forward to this year, what's the next inefficiency you're going to try to tackle? And if there isn't something specific that comes to mind, you can frame it as you see in our industry, what's the big inefficiency you want to tackle? You can take either version of that question.
I think a lot of my kind of like phasing over even from this past year into this year is the focus is largely on lead generation and sales. I think that I anticipate that there will continually be more. I mentioned at the beginning that it's not a heavily regulated industry, and I think that a lot of that can cause pain to consumers. And so I think that ensuring that in terms of how you're reaching people is done in a forthright manner, how people want to be communicated with, um, amidst all the stigma that's out there as well. And people are becoming more and more educated. They're smarter, which is a good thing. They're coming to these meetings with our consultants knowing a lot more than people did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so I think it's organically forcing organic change for people who run a sales organization is having them change their methodologies and how they interact with these people. And the people who don't, they're going to be uncomfortable with that approach. But that's kind of where a lot of the focus on efficiencies will be, because it is a very dynamic place at this time.
That's awesome. I did not expect you to say that. Obviously, you have so much focus on operational lens, but I do think a new way to do lead gen and think about our top of funnel motion and doing it the right ways, that's certainly a good call out. Darrell, thank you. Right, thank you so much for your insight, for elevating all of our efficiencies and teaching us all a bunch of things. For the guy that does stuff, you really did a lot of awesome educating for us here today. So thanks for everything.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Take care.